Hey guys, I just want to give you a quick little comprehensive guide on how to use Monolith DKP. It is fairly simple, straightforward once you get the hang of it. But first, we're just going to open the menu by typing /DKP. You can see all the different commands by typing DKP question mark down at the bottom here. So when it opens, this is what you're going to see. It's going to be empty, obviously. So we'll go ahead and get some values in there. This is what you can use to add and remove players from the list. Add raid members is going to add everybody in your raid that is also in your guild. It will not add anybody that is not in your guild, so you can omit any pugs or anything that might be in there. Add guild members obviously adds everybody in your guild that meets a certain threshold with regard to rank. You select the rank you want to add, and it'll add everybody in the ranks in that rank as well as all the ranks above it, so you can filter out alts and such. Add target here is actually that's going to be the only option that will add any player regardless of whether or not they're in your guild. As long as they're a player character, you can add them to the list. So if you got somebody that might be joining and whatnot, you can go ahead and do that. So I'll go ahead and populate this list with guild members. And now we got something to toy with here. So first thing, obviously the filters tab is pretty self-explanatory. Filter stuff out by class and whatnot. You can just show party raid. Obviously I'm not in a party or raid, so come down to just DKP. This is where you're going to be modifying DKP values and awarding DKP and such. Any kind of changes you need to make to players' DKP values, this is where you're going to do it. So normally what you do after a boss kill, this is going to auto select down to boss kill. It's going to auto select the boss that you just killed, and basically all you have to do is show raid only, select all visible, and then adjust DKP to award the default value, which is set right here in the options tab. You'll set all the different default values for those options there. Weekly DKP decay down here is basically just an option to apply a weekly decay if you want to. Just reduces everybody's DKP down by a specific percentage, kind of creates an artificial cap. To show you what that is, we'll just go ahead and do a test here. We'll give everybody 200 DKP, select all, adjust, and that will give everybody in the list 200 DKP. The decay will apply to everybody on the list as shown there. If you want to only do it to certain people, so say you want to do it to people that are too high on DKP, so to speak, you can just select the checkbox down here, and this will apply only the decay to the selected players. Now, real quick, we'll go ahead and show you what happens when you kill a boss and how to do the bidding. So basically, the rules for bidding is you can either use the /DKP bid command, or you can shift and alt click on an item to bring up the bid menu. However, the stipulation on that one is it must be on this first page of the loot window. If it's down on the second page here, it's not going to do anything. You're not going to be able to shift and alt click it. So to do that, you'll just loot the first page and then bring everything to the first page. So I'll go ahead and we can do the DKP bid and link the item, and it'll bring it up there. As you can see, it already selected the boss, or you can shift alt click. And also here, it selected the boss here. You'll select all, adjust DKP, award people 5 for killing that boss. That is, of course, going to show up here in the DKP history. This is where you're going to show everything. Whenever you make a change to somebody's DKP, it's going to be listed here by date, by whatever you set as the reason, date and time, and categorize as such. So we'll go ahead and do bidding real quick to demonstrate how that works. Basically, if you are in the middle of a bid and you accidentally close this window, you can just type DKP bid to get that back open. And you set the bid timer here in the options window as well. As far as minimum bid goes, as I showed you before, that is going to be set down here in the options window. You can set whatever the minimum DKP is on a per slot basis, and then you can broadcast those values to all officers so that they all have the same values. Additionally, if you want to have individual values for specific items, say you have certain items that you think are worth more DKP than the other items in their slot category, you can give them default values by simply changing this number. And starting bid. When you start the bid, it's going to lock in that number for that item, and anytime you open a bid window for that item again, it's going to use that value. So we'll do a little demonstration here for that. Can end the bidding. You're going to see this custom box pop up. So anytime from that point forward, if you open it up, bid window for that item, it's going to have that custom value. To get rid of that custom value, you simply uncheck that, and the next time you start and end the bid, it will go back to its normal value. Sub-zero bidding down here is essentially whether or not you want to allow somebody to go into the negative in DKP. So, for example, right now, my DKP would only be 165. If this if I were to bid 170, it would deny me and say you don't have enough DKP to do that. However, if the bidder has, or the person hosting the bid has this box checked, that will allow any bids to go through, that will put them in the negative so long as they are in the positive when they start. So right now I'm positive 165, so I could bid 200 if I want. However, that would put me down to into the negative, and I would not be able to bid again until I get back into the positive. So that's entirely at the leader's discretion, obviously. So to show a quick demonstration bid here real quick, I'm just going to start the bid here, and in order to do that, you will send a whisper to whoever's hosting the bid with bid and then the value you want to bid. If you bid below the minimum bid value, it is obviously going to deny it. If you try to go into the negative, it's going to deny it, etc. So I'll send that. It'll say it's accepted down here, and your name will populate into this list. And that list is going to be ordered by the highest bid to lowest bid, top to bottom. Additionally, you can use the bid cancel command, and that's going to remove you from the bidding. If you submit a bid and then you decide you don't want to bid anymore, it'll remove you from that. You can also change how much you bid, and it'll update it real time here. So that's up to you. Once the bidding is completed, you will just select who you want to give the item to. Make sure the item cost here is updated to whatever you want it to cost. By default, it automatically sets as the minimum bid until there is more than one bidder. If there's two bidders, then it'll change to whatever the number two person bid. So if one person bid, it's going to be the default minimum bid. If two people bid, this is going to change to the number two player's bid. So you'll select the player you want to award to, click award, yes, and as you can see here, it awards that to the player. Now, as far as access to these tabs go, officers will be able to see everything here as well as the leader. However, non-officers will not be able to see adjust or manage tabs, and the option tab, everything up here and everything right here in the default minimum bid values is not going to be available to your standard player. The non-officer players, they will just see these 5 options and then these down here. Obviously, these are pretty self-explanatory what they do. Loot history limit, DKP history limit. These limit how much history you actually store in your computer. If you want to increase performance somehow and your guild leader is broadcasting 2,500 items, you might not want to keep all of them. That's up to you on a player-by-player basis. Obviously, you also have the tooltip here, which shows the recent history that can be expanded on with this. can go up to 35. Obviously, we don't have 35 entries to show, so we can't really see what it looks like with all 35, but it can get pretty big. That includes all DKP editions, all DKs, and as well as loot you receive as shown right here. You can move the bid timer with that, and of course when you change everything you want to save settings. One additional note is this broadcast values, you'll broadcast everything right here to your other officers so you all have values that match up, but it will also broadcast any of those custom values that you made for specific items that I showed you. Alright, for the loot history tab and DKP history tab, they're basically just a log for, obviously this one's for loot, and this is for anything you do over here in the adjust DKP tab. This is only going to be visible, or rather the tabs will be visible for everybody, but the context menus will only be visible for officers. So, oops. For loot history, this will auto-populate. The filter will populate as players loot more items. It's only going to show players that have actually looted items. The tooltip here for the items are at the very bottom. When there are more than one looted, it will actually show who else has looted that item in the past and what day that was looted. The two options for the context menu here is delete and reassign. So if I was to delete the entry, it would simply remove this and it would refund whoever looted it whatever DKP they spent on it. Reassigning, however, you will select another person. Say you want to, you looted it to the wrong person. You want to reassign it to somebody. You'll select who you want to reassign it to, click reassign, and click yes, and it will refund the first person their DKP and subtract it to the person you switched it to. And obviously it'll change their name here. DKP history works pretty much the same way. You right click it. The only option here is delete. If you delete an entry, it's going to automatically refund or remove whatever DKP was given or taken away by that entry that you're deleting. So this one I awarded everybody, well, we'll do the decay here. I decayed these 4 people or 5 people 20%. Doing this will refund those specific people their 20% that was withdrawn, and I can do this to refund everybody their 20%. Obviously be careful with the DKs, well, deleting the DKs rather. If you delete the DKs immediately after you've applied them, it'll always be accurate. However, if you apply a DK and then you add other values to it and then try and remove the DK, it's going to be a little off. So I recommend only really using that if you haven't added or subtracted any DKP from any entries since the DK, if that makes sense. These options down here are going to be for broadcasting to everybody. Usually you only want to really do that at the beginning of a raid or at the end of a raid when everybody's there and available, basically, when you have everybody all in one place. These will broadcast to the entire guild, so whether or not they're in the zone is irrelevant. I've got a brief little warning here that kind of tells you how to handle it, but broadcast DKP table obviously is going to broadcast this guy right here, all the information, all the values. That is relatively instant. However, loot history and DKP history, I'm sure you can imagine, these can get pretty beefy. They can go up to several thousand values. It takes a while to get there, but they can get that high. If you do get these guys up to a couple thousand values, it could take a minute or two, sometimes 2.5, 3 minutes to actually broadcast all of it. You don't have to worry about that too much. That'll literally take 10 to 12 months to actually obtain that many values to the point where it's gonna take some time. It will not lag you. It just takes that much time to complete sending it, and it is going to notify you when you send it and when it's completed, as well as on the receiving side they will be notified when they're receiving it, as well as when it's completed. One other thing to note right here in this black area, this character isn't currently a guild leader, so I can't see it. Um, but there is a whitelist option here that is available only for leaders. I'd recommend for the average person to simply leave that alone. That was kind of added as a niche option for somebody that's requested it. Basically, everybody, all officers in the guild that have right to officer note permissions has permissions to modify this table in any way, award DKP, do bidding and such. Some people might not want that. They might not want all of their officers to have access to it. So there's actually 3 buttons here to create a whitelist. And the only players you can select in this list are officers, or those that have permission to write to officer notes. So you'll select the officers that you want to actually receive permission, and you'll set the whitelist. After that, if you click View Whitelist, which will be right about here, that's going to simply reselect everybody that you put on the whitelist. If you want to delete the whitelist, you'll simply make sure nothing is selected here and you'll set that and it'll completely remove the whitelist. The third button over here is simply to broadcast the whitelist to everybody in the guild. The problem with using the whitelist is it overrides the settings to give officer permissions to only those that have right to officer permissions in the guild. So if somebody doesn't have if somebody wasn't online and didn't receive the broadcast, they won't have those permissions set for them, and they'll be able to do whatever they want to the table. They won't be able to broadcast it to you because you'll catch it, and it won't apply it to your tables, but they'll still be able to edit it. So it can get kind of sketchy. I'd recommend, if you don't want to mess with anything, just leave it alone, but the option is available if you do want to limit it. Another mild feature is down here you can see if your tables are currently up to date. Every player can see that. Um, the guild leader's note is updated with a timestamp every time you add a modification to the DKP table, award a loot item, etc., etc. A timestamp is left there so everybody in the guild can see whether or not they have the updated DKP status, or the updated DKP tables. If an officer in the guild has outdated DKP tables, if they attempt to broadcast their tables to other guild members, they will be notified that their tables are out of date, and modifying that could cause damage. And also, the officers that are receiving it will receive a prompt asking them if they wish to accept the broadcast because they are out of date. You could choose to if you want to or not, but you have the option of blocking that if you are concerned that it is going to mess with your updated tables. That pretty much is everything in the UI, though. There's not much, like I said, there's not much to it. As far as other additional commands, you can do DKP export, and that's going to bring open an export window here. Right now, there is no web support at the moment. I'm working on getting web support to upload the files to on a website for review and such. But for right now, you're just going to want to click these buttons in order. This is just going to generate an HTML document for all 3 tables, the DKP, DKP history, and loot history tables. You'll just copy everything in here, paste it into an HTML file, click the next one, copy everything here, paste it underneath the first table that you placed, and then do the same with the third. Place this at the bottom, and that will put it into a tabbed table for you on a HTML page, and you can upload that to Discord or do whatever you like. But that is about it with the add-on. If you have any other questions, concerns, or recommendations, please feel free to post below, or submit them to the GitHub that is linked below as well. Obviously, any kind of bug reports you could send me would be helpful to get this thing working up 100%. I've tested it extensively, and it's been pretty much foolproof on everything so far, but obviously I can't test everything. Uh, but if you enjoy it, I appreciate you letting me know, and have fun.